8 brain responses to long-term goals. You know that feeling when you decide, with complete sincerity, that this time is different. You can see the whole picture clearly, the goal, the version of yourself on the other side of it, the life that follows. And for a day, maybe 2, maybe even a week, you move toward it with something that feels almost effortless. Then something shifts. Not dramatically, there's no obvious breaking point. You just slow down. The urgency softens. The vision that felt so vivid starts to lose its color around the edges. And before long, you're back where you started, wondering what happened to the person who cared so much just a few days ago. Most people file that away as a personal failure, a discipline problem, a character flaw they quietly carry. They don't talk about it much because it sounds like an excuse, and they're not sure it isn't. But what if the real story has nothing to do with failure at all? What's actually happening in those moments, that fade, that loss of momentum, that baffling gap between what you want and what you do, is one of the most consistent and well-documented patterns in human neuroscience. And it has a name, it has a mechanism, and once you understand it, the experience stops feeling like a mystery about who you are and starts feeling like information about how your brain is built. This is about what your brain actually does when you pursue something that matters over a long period of time. Not what people say it should do, not the motivational version, what it actually, measurably, demonstrably does. The first thing the brain does when you commit to a long-term goal is generate what researchers call a reward prediction signal. Dopamine, which most people associate with pleasure, is actually far more active during anticipation than during achievement. The moment you decide to pursue something meaningful, your brain releases a spike of dopamine that is triggered not by having the thing, but by imagining it. This is why the first day of a new commitment often feels electric. The brain is responding to possibility, not progress. What comes next is almost inevitable given that architecture. Because the brain is an efficiency machine above almost everything else, it begins to discount future rewards the moment the initial excitement settles. There is a well-replicated phenomenon in behavioral economics called temporal discounting, which describes the brain's tendency to value immediate rewards far more heavily than future ones, even when the future reward is objectively larger. A study by researchers at Princeton found that when participants imagined future rewards, they activated a different neural circuitry than when they considered immediate ones. The future self, neurologically, registers more like a stranger than like you. Your brain literally does not prioritize that person the same way it prioritizes the version of you that exists right now. This is not laziness. This is not weakness. This is an ancient system doing precisely what it was designed to do. The part that often goes unexamined is where this design came from. The nervous system that governs your behavior was shaped in environments where long-term planning was not the most pressing survival skill. For most of human history, the relevant timescale was immediate. Where is the food? What is that sound? Is this safe? The brain that survived was the one that responded to the present with urgency, not the one that held a steady course toward an abstract future. When you find yourself pulled away from a goal by something more immediate, something closer, something more visceral, you are not failing. You are running software that is very, very old. The third thing that happens is a cortisol response that most people don't associate with goal pursuit at all. When the brain registers the size of a long-term goal, it can trigger a stress response, not unlike the one produced by threat. The anterior cingulate cortex, which plays a key role in effort-based decision-making, essentially calculates the gap between where you are and where you want to be. When that gap is large, the system can read it as a form of threat, and the body responds accordingly. This is why for some people, thinking about a long-term goal too directly creates a vague dread rather than excitement. The brain is not distinguishing between the kind of challenge you invited and the kind that was imposed on you. Then there is what neuroscientists sometimes call the arrival fallacy, which is the brain's somewhat systematic failure to accurately predict how achieving a goal will actually feel. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for imagining future emotional states, is surprisingly poor at this task. Studies consistently show that people overestimate both the intensity and the duration of the positive feelings they expect from reaching a goal. The brain forecasts arrival as resolution, but resolution is rarely what happens. What usually happens is that the neural circuitry simply recalibrates and the hunger returns, reshaped around the next thing. None of this is better or worse than another way of being. There are people who seem to pursue long-term goals with less friction, and there are people for whom the gap between intention and action is a constant and exhausting presence. Neither wiring is a moral position, neither is a verdict on character. The brain that struggles with long-term pursuit often has heightened sensitivity to the present experience. It responds to the immediate world with depth and intensity. That same wiring can be a liability in certain contexts and a profound gift in others. The brain that sustains long-term goals with apparent ease often sacrifices some of its responsiveness to the present. Every configuration carries a trade. The counterintuitive layer, the one most conversations about goals never reach, is this. The difficulty is not primarily about motivation, it is about identity. There is a body of research suggesting that the most reliable predictor of long-term behavior change is not goal setting, willpower, or strategy. It is the degree to which the behavior becomes woven into how a person understands themselves. When the brain categorizes a behavior as something you do rather than something you are trying to do, the effort involved drops dramatically. The struggle is often not about the goal itself, it is about the cognitive work of maintaining two identities simultaneously, the person you currently are and the person the goal requires you to become. That tension is not motivational, it is existential, and it is genuinely hard in a way that has nothing to do with how much you want something. There is also a quieter cost that rarely gets named. When someone pursues a meaningful goal for a long time and repeatedly encounters the patterns described here, the fade, the pull back to the familiar, the gap between intention and action, the mind sometimes draws a conclusion that is not accurate. It concludes that the goal was wrong, or that the effort was not real, or that the person is simply not built for it. But the patterns are not evidence of any of those things. They are the expected output of a system responding exactly as it was designed to do. The conclusion the mind draws is the problem, not the patterns themselves. The part of this that matters most is not a technique, it is a reframe. The brain was not designed for long-term goals in the way that a key is designed for a lock. It was designed for survival, and long-term goal pursuit is something humans learn to do in spite of that design, not because of it. Every person who has ever sustained something meaningful over time has done so while navigating the same friction, the same fading, the same pull toward the immediate. The ones who continued were not necessarily stronger or more disciplined. They were often simply more willing to expect the friction and continue anyway, without interpreting the friction as a signal to stop. You are not broken because this is hard. The difficulty is the expected experience of a system that was never optimized for exactly this. And the fact that you are still drawn toward the goal, even after it has faded and returned and faded again, says something about you that the discouragement tends to obscure. The brain defaults toward safety and immediacy. Anything that pulls you toward growth and future possibility is not the path of least resistance. It never was. It was always going to require something. There is something else worth understanding about the way the brain responds to the people and patterns in your history and how those patterns quietly shape what feels possible for you now. That thread runs deeper than most people realize, and it tends to explain a great deal about where the resistance actually comes from.